You recognize this? We've hiked this in Colorado together before on the channel, but today we're getting after it with the 50mm F1.2. I'm filming with that wide open now so that you can get a look. And I'll take you on a few different hikes out west in this video, but our real ride today is the emotional roller coaster of whether or not it's time for you to buy a flagship Prime. This might be the Prime for me, but as incredible as the rental has been, I still have a few hesitations. Before we get after it, I'm excited to share that this video is sponsored by LR Timelapse. You'll see why I love it by the end of the video. Earlier this year, I brought the nifty 50 to New Zealand, but mainly I brought the zooms because that's what I'm comfortable with when traveling. So why did the F4 zoom travel guy run with the big 50mm for a month? Is what I want you to be asking yourself at this point. You ever hold an F1.2 in your hand? I want you to hold it, try it on. All of the light, we can have all of it if we want. Yeah, so it's the wide open aperture that makes you want it. If you're anything like me, traveling, landscaping, or just playing poor, then it's hard for us to call the jump from F1.8 to F1.2 a need. But let's suspend our disbelief for just a few more minutes. I had an epic wedding to attend to and close friends to see in Utah, so it was the perfect opportunity to snag a rental, to book a flight from Pennsylvania, and travel across the country in a plane for a long weekend, just like any sane modern person would do if they needed to close a 2,500-mile gap in a few hours. So anyways, I hopped out of my Kia and I started blasting. Wide open, mind you. Excited, but scared. Scared is my natural state. Way out of my carefully curated comfort zone of F4 travel workhorses and complimentary budget primes. Not sure about you, but no matter how many trips I take, I always have the nagging "did I pack the right lenses" feeling. After playing it safe in New Zealand earlier this year, it felt right to get adventurous on a domestic trip and pare down to mostly this prime. You'd think that carrying only one lens would be fine, but that's where the struggle began. As soon as I started hauling its ass around. The 50mm F1.2 is a half-pound heavier than the RF 24-105 F4. It was hot and heavy in Zion. It was hot and heavy in Ivins. It was hot and heavy when I got back to Colorado. It monopolizes a big chunk of your bag, a downside I had forgotten about since my RF 85mm rentals, but then quickly remembered. I'm a big battery grip guy, but I haven't touched that in weeks because it's just too much weight on the shoulder together, and it's too swingy in the capture clip with a lens like this. Simply put, the 50mm isn't tailor-made for shooters like us. It's just the wrong tool for the job. What makes it awesome makes it heavy and unwieldy. I think the palpable frustration among Canon shooters is the absence of the tool that we actually want, and that's the RF 50mm F1.4. It hasn't been announced officially as of scripting, and you can't choose between a tool that exists and an imaginary one. If you've never shot F1.2, fair warning, you will need an ND filter to shoot wide open during the day. I was using a few stops on occasion, even for photos, with a 1/8,000th shutter. And you'll absolutely need one for video, potentially even 5 or more stops. The real conundrum is that while it's not ideal to bring up a mountain or to pack, and you'll often leave other gear behind to prioritize it, it is an absolute treat otherwise. The annoyances may just be a fair trade for the look and the light, and that has me conflicted on it, even after a lengthy rental. I haven't purchased this lens up until this point because when in doubt, wait it out. I also don't have a spare $2,000, and I'm not 100% sold on keeping a 50mm flagship forever, or at least as my main prime for several years down the line. But for my style of shooting, and for the direction that I hope I continue to grow in, you probably don't need to haul that F1.2 all the way up to Chasm Lake. This was maybe the hardest hike that I've done, probably at the greatest altitude. The views are worth it. Anything I shot here, I could have shot at F1.8 on the nifty 50, unless it got a little rainy, in which case, Canon, for the love of God, it's been 6 years, fill out your lineup. Speaking of missing tools, today's sponsor, LR Timelapse. This was missing from my bag of tricks, and it's the go-to tool for editing your best time lapses. I'm excited to finally take mine to the next level, and you only need to watch 1 or 2 tutorials before you can start removing flicker and making the programmatic adjustments that enable holy grail time lapses. That is, taking scenes from day to night after manually adjusting your settings in the field while you shoot. Use my link in the description to try it out for free, and comment below if you'd like to see me walk through one of my LR time-lapse edits on a future video. So, it's heavy, and maybe not made for me as much as I want it to be made for me. And as clickable as the thumbnail would be, I'm not going to do a whole side-by-side nifty 50 comparison because A, we don't pixel peep much on this channel, B, my nifty 50 is out on long-term loan, and C, few are really choosing between those two lenses in reality. If you love 50mm and you're making some money from photography, specifically with the 50, you're likelier to end up with both instead of one or the other. But the huge additional investment does get you something. F1.2 is not just something to lust over. It turns a normal focal length into a usable astro lens. Not perfect in the corners when wide open, but it helps enable faster shutter speeds like 8 seconds, and it renders your backgrounds nice and creamy. Whether that's worth $2,000 more is for you to say, but like I said, that's not in the cards for me right now at the moment. There are less tangible positives to a lens like this as well. That sounds kind of hokey, but there is something to shooting top tier glass in that you know for sure it's you that's holding you back and not the gear. That should always be obvious if you have a shred of self-awareness, but it's a little bit of humble pie if not. Another thing I noticed over this month was that the F1.2 seems better shooting into light. Wild guess as to why event and wedding shooters dig it. When using the PMVND mist, you do get some crazier flaring and rainbows, but generally it keeps decent contrast shooting into light. Sending this one back hurts. It always does, but I felt like I was shooting pretty well while I had it. Not because of it. There is no doubt a special little sauce that might have made some of the photos that I liked best. And there are many shots of friends that I didn't even share that were fun to take on a bona fide portrait lens. It's really hard to be conspicuous with this lens, for example. Those around you are either drawn to it, they want their picture taken, and it becomes kind of an activity, or they're repelled by it. But what did we learn here? A couple of things. Number one, if you're a travel or landscape photographer, going to new places, more places, and enjoying them with good people, that's probably the play over choosing new gear.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
At least I think so if you're in the financial spot like me for the moment, where you have to choose between travel or new gear in any given year. Shout out to Peak Design, by the way, for giving me these new travel bags for the trip. Watch my latest pod for more, but I was dearly missing a tech pouch for travel as I found out. And number two, take as much time deciding on a flagship prime as you need. It's taking me years at this point. 50mm grows on me over 85mm by the day, but I don't think I could part with the 28mm until I have a fast wide zoom. Wait it out. So with the 51.2 shipped back to lens rentals and the excitement of my Utah excursion long behind, I'm back to boring old Colorado again. Oh, poor me. And I'll be here with my Core 4 kit. I'll continue my prime challenge right where I left off with the 50mm. I'll do what I was too scared to do in New Zealand. Scared is my natural state. And I will really ride the 28mm and 85mm for most of my remaining time here. And you better believe that I'm going to get after some epic time lapses now that I have LR time lapse to process them. Come hang out while I edit some 50mm shots from this video in Lightroom, or watch this next video, give me some of your sweet little watch time so that this video finds more photographers like you and I.